Hello everyone, just a quick note that not all information presented on the Grey League channel is strictly Greyhawk canon, though I did use information from published books, the Urt Journal, as well as Jared's, also known as Cruel Summerlord's, amazing work on the Canon Fire website. Only a fraction of my viewers are in fact subscribers, and it will boost my morale check if you push the subscribe button and the bell icon. A message spell will then show you when a new video is available. You can also find me at Twitter as well as through my website. I've put links in the description. Now, grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's take a journey in Greyhawk. The different human tribes of the Flanaess were scattered during the last 1,000 years of human migration, as well as through the many wars that raged the land. Intermarriages have become very common, and purebloods are rare these days in the common year of 595. Most humans today are somewhat of a mixture of two or more human bloodlines, and do not have prominent physical features of one singular culture. Interestingly, a human of the Flanaess does rarely speak about skin color because of it. Still, there are regions where one culture has remained somewhat pure, and there are regions where one culture has remained more dominant than another. For you, members of the League, I'll shed some light on the customs and traditions of the human tribes of Urt. The Bakluni once held a great empire on the western side of the Crystal Mists and Barrier Peak mountains. In its early stages, the Bakluni tribes were constantly threatened from all borders, but the greatest threat always came from its south. First, they were regularly assaulted by Urit horsemen of the southern plains, but later the people of the Sulhats terrorized them. These people, the Sul, were constantly looking for weaknesses in which to launch a full-scale invasion, and they would become their arch-enemies. The rapid mobility of the Baklunish cavalry, however, allowed them to meet threats from the Sulhats to the tghermit on short notice, thus maintaining the integrity of their state. It is unlikely that any other people could have forged an empire such as that built by the Bakluni. Even a 63-year war, now properly named the Great War, with its cataclysmic ending, did not destroy its people nor its culture. Where the Bakluni live, you may ask? Well, most will answer you in the Baklunish West, but this is from a Flanaess-centric point of view, as this Baklunish West to the Bakluni themselves is actually the Baklunish East. First, we need to know where they originated from, and that we do not really know. The closest we get are the grassy central plains we now call the Paynim Plains. We can assume that they started as a nomadic herder people, and despite their later movements into cities, they still largely maintain that wild, roving nature, with only a fraction of them actually living in permanent settlements. Somewhere in these early beginnings they created a strong bond with horses, who were in abundance on the enormous plains. This led the Bakluni herders to expand their territory in all directions. Now we cannot ignore history and the cataclysmic events that took place, events that shaped the Bakluni and determined their current location on Urt. Let's start at the beginning. Humans, as we know, reproduce quickly, and the Bakluni population increased immensely, settling in fertile lands far south near the Sulhat Mountains. Though there were numerous forests, they were not dense, nor large, but the fertile grasslands gave the Bakluni endless farmland. Many nomadic tribes built small settlements, and trade began with the people of the high plateau across the Sulhat Mountains, the Sul. They might have traded with these people for 1,000 years until skirmishes broke out. Skirmishes that became wars, and wars that evolved in the Great War and ended in the apocalyptic event, the invoked devastation. Their towns, forts, and the few cities they had were obliterated. The population turned to ash, and the land defiled for centuries. We now call this devastated area the Dry Steppes. But 20 years before the devastation, a wandering prophet had spent years convincing several tribal people from the central lands to flee the misfortune that was about to happen to them. Being expert horsemen, those who believed the prophet rode far and far to the north, and lived in the cooler plains, which would later be overrun by the relentless horde. Fate brought 4 of these 6 Bakluni families back to their homeland and live in these now well-known traditional Bakluni lands. They were later joined by the Bakluni of the Central Plains, who managed to survive the devastation and had fled to join the northern settlements near the Dramich Ocean. This whole area is known as the Baklunish Basin, and the settled states, with their cities and busy trade routes, runs from the Bakuri coast in the west to the Yatel Mountains in the east, and is the stronghold of Baklunish culture. It's this region that Flanaess people call the Baklunish West, and does include Zif, Egbir, Tuzmit, Ul, and Ket. One people survived the apocalypse of the south, the horse people that lived on the western periphery of the devastation and who were still numerous. They rode into the Central Plains, drove out the pure Bakluni tribes, and now ruled over endless leagues of grasslands, bordering the territories of Zif and Ul. From then on, we call it the Great Paynim Plains. While these plains end in the lush valleys of the western Ulspru Mountains, they also border the dry steppes in the south. But the Paynim are fearless, and they have managed to settle even in those plains. For over 1,000 years, the Paynim tribes have been masters over those territories. The Paynim migrations are common knowledge to the Bakluni. Summers are brutally hot in the southern steppes, and so the Paynim stay in the northern steppes, close to Zif, a time of tension for the Zifa people. The hordes return south when the winter brings rain in that area. The Paynims drive their herds to the southern pastures only they know where to find. The Paynim still prefer to dwell in tents and carry their belongings with them as they move, and as we will discuss later on, are most definitely of Baklunish stock, though they have a strong Oridian mixed heritage. Finally, there are the lands on the other side of the Bakuri coast, crossing the Gulf of Gayar. These lands are also still populated by a branch of the Baklunish people and are, in fact, the true Baklunish West. I also want to note that today there is a Paynim tribe living within the Bright Desert, but I am leaving that for another video. The purest Bakluni have golden-hued skins, grey, green or green eyes, and straight, fine-textured hair that is universally dark, ranging from dusky brown to bluish black. They tend to be long of limb and have a high cheekbone. This could be an accurate description of the pure Bakluni in the lands of Egbir, the tiger nomads, Ul, and Zif around the Dramich Ocean. Farther east, however, racial mixing results in modified appearances. The wolf nomads are Baklunish mixed with Flan from the rovers of the Barrens, and have correspondingly darker features, and even some curly hair. In Ket, mixing with both Uridians and Sul gave rise to folk with less golden skin tone. One might even say they have pale tanned skin. The Ketites are the least typical, and a very rare appearance here would be a Bakluni with golden or even white hair, or perhaps even blue eyes, but it is not unheard of. If we go south of Zif and the Paynim Plains, we have the southern Paynims, who have a darker complexion and look wrinkled to other humans. They are sturdy, with a large torso and short limbs. Most have dark eyes and dark hair, though a few can have amber or fire-red hair. The people in the real Baklunish West are rumored to be shorter, with black hair and dark, narrow eyes. Though almost unheard of, golden eyes have been seen from time to time among any of the Bakluni, but when it happens, it almost always indicates a child with genie bloodlines. Fashion-wise, we can see that all settled Bakluni favor bright patterns and flamboyant colors in clothes, typically with gowns and robes, or else long coats with short breeches. Noting that lower classes use the same colors, but most often wear long one-piece garments, supplemented with another garb. Nomadic Bakluni, on the other hand, prefer clothes with several pastel colors, but still enjoy fancy garments enhanced with puffs, slashes on the sleeves to show contrasting colors underneath. Both the settled and nomadic men commonly wear turbans. In Ziv and Egbir, the oldest states, fashion amongst the well-to-do has reached new levels. Many a bard in the Flanaess has told mesmerizing tales of beauty of Bakluni men and women, and many a merchant has gone to great lengths to get their hands on the material the men wear. The nomadic Paynim have a slightly different approach, however, though on occasion they can be seen in typical Bakluni dress. When they live in the hostile environment of the south, they must blend in their surroundings in order to survive. They prefer loose garb in a sand, copper or even darker color. They layer up their clothes in order to get the greatest benefit against the weather. Sturdy riding boots and some leather additions is also worn on a daily basis. Now the wolf and tiger nomads, descendants of the relentless horde, have adapted to the cold and windy climate they now roam in. The harsh winter wind that rages across the steppes makes the actual temperature feel like a bitter coldness that chills the bones. Winter clothing is a must here and typically includes felt hats, long jackets with loose sleeves and practical baggy trousers. Cloth is actually of great value to these nomads and thus hunt different animals for their hide and fur. Clothing needs to be warm or cool depending on the season, but must be durable at all times. This is why nomads' clothing is layered and, as they are often on the move and on horseback, unrestrictive. Firstly, there is ancient Baklunish, which was a vital component in creating modern common. Today it is still spoken by the Paynim tribes, in the remaining tribes in the central lands and among some tribes and clans in surrounding lands such as Ziv and Tazmit. It is also frequently used in formal addresses, in religion, mythology and poetry, as well as being the language of all official documents and courtly proceedings west of the Yatyls. Next we have Low Baklunish, descended from ancient Baklunish, but it has changed much throughout time and encompasses most of the contemporary colloquial Baklunish dialects. Despite these ancestral languages, common is understood by all Bakluni living in and near cities that see much trade. Many centuries ago, the Uridians of the Kingdom of Erdi in the east realized that they needed to be able to communicate with the important Bakluni traders of the west. Peace with the Baklunish realms brought exotic trading caravans all the way to the eastern coast of the Flanaess, and there was a need for a mutual language. A language to make trade even more thriving, and common was thus born, out of a combination of ancient Baklunish and the dialect of Old Uridian. Now one more language needs mentioning, and it is Ordai. This dialect, shared by the wolf and tiger nomads, bears some resemblance to ancient Baklunish, but it has its roots in the dialects spoken among the distant Paynims. Its written form is based on the Baklunish script. These people understand astrology, theology, psychology, meteorology, navigation, mathematics, business and warcraft, not as independent sciences, but each as an integral part of the whole. Most other human cultures do not have the ability to truly understand the importance of astrological speculation and the role it plays in everyday life. For the educated Bakluni, astrology forms an essential part of the entire holistic intellectual framework. It is through these scholarly pursuits that the way to their kind of magic was uncovered. A magic that is nothing like the rude, destructive evocations the Sul and the Uridians use. They prefer magic that affects forces and principles. Many skilled wizards are thus experts in illusion and divination. The ancient Baklunish archmagi discovered that there is immense raw magical power in magic that is tied to the elemental planes, and it can be molded into anything you can think of. They also discovered the power of summoning, as well as how to bind elemental spirits into items. And it is from this time that the famous binders were mentioned. We know that the Bakluni wizards created hundreds of other magical items that are closely tied to the elements, but I'll list a few of the more powerful artifacts they have created. First, it is rumored they had binders of elemental binding. Thick binders were created to each capture a powerful elemental spirit. Tales speak of powerful genies, and they were bound within an item. He who controls the binder controls the elemental spirit. Another item is the Ashen Staff, a 3-part collaborative major artifact created by the Baklunish Archmage Ilgben and the Council of Elders. It is assembled by using the Rod of Ash, the Great Crystal of Askaf, and the Fire Rod of the Suluiz. It has only been assembled once, on the day that Ilgben called down the rain of colorless fire upon the Sul Empire from Tovah Baragu, a colossal stone circle, an immensely holy place. The Tapestry of Egbir is another legendary artifact. This 10 feet by 15 feet woven tapestry displays a scene of a dark river in a bleak, rocky landscape. Tapestry was intended to be a gate from Egbir to the lower plains for disposal of its worst criminals. But several tales spin a different story. Well, who knows what is truth? A more contemporary wizard worth mentioning here is Alamazat the Wise, newest member of the Circle of Eight and hailing from the Sultanate of Zif. Now, among the Paynim, however, a handful have been born with the innate gift of arcane or occult power, and they are regarded with great awe and superstition. These men or women usually live alone in tents pitched some distance from the main camps, or even alone as hermits, and, according to ancient tradition, only nobles may converse with them. And now far away, among the nomads of the north, magic is not feared nor shunned, but studying magic is less common here. Fate and the ancestors decide who is born with a talent in illusion, divination, and summoning. Religion revolves around the acceptance of fate, and no man may escape his fate. This fate is personified by the Baklunish goddess Istus, the Lady of Destiny. Non-Bakluni believe Istus is their one true god, and all must obey her, but this is a misconception. Istus became the dominant religion of the Bakluni only after the invoked devastation. The destruction of their empire and the struggle to rebuild caused the Bakluni to embrace Istus, and many came to be fatalistic about life. The most common phrase among these folk is, "It is the will of Istus." This fatalism often caused the Bakluni to take more risks than other cultures in the Flanaess. Even though they do not actively pursue worship of Istus, anyone born in Bakluni culture is always concerned with his fate and will work to ensure his fortune. In that regard, it is this notion of fatalism that made the Bakluni resourceful and gifted with an entrepreneur's mindset. It is interesting to note that within the male-dominated Baklunish society, where women are generally given less rights, that the priests of Istus stand in stark contrast, or at least 80% of them are female, as Istus treats all who serve her equally, and many women thus came in positions of power. Men fear Istus for her power over their fates and thus follow the dictates of her priests, even if they are women. Istus may be the dominant fate today. She is, however, not the only power worshipped in the Bakluni society. For example, Geshtai is one of the myriad powers that the Bakluni worshipped and who is still revered to this day by Baklunid caravan masters and the Paynim nomads. They give thanks to Geshtai when they reach an oasis, for instance, and allows the goddess to survive. She is the patron of lakes, rivers, and wells. Makul is the god of merchants, negotiations, trade, and reciprocity. He teaches that nothing comes without risk, but that ultimately everyone takes one risk too many. The key to life is knowing when to stop. He has always been instrumental in the mercantile power that the Bakluni became. Then we come to Al-Azran, the Shining Father, who rides the sun across the skies by day in the golden chariot, hearing the oaths of those who swear by his name, and ensuring that these oaths are upheld and truthfully said. He is stern but loving, just and merciful. He is, however, the same deity the Flan know as Pelor, and the Oridians call Solar. Another mutual god is Al-Zarat, and he is the god of magic and learning, which, as we know, go hand in hand in their culture. Sciences are very much respected. The deity is, however, also known to other human cultures as Bokop. There are many more deities that once were worshipped by the Bakluni, and you will find families or even whole tribes still worshipping one of these lesser deities. Proof can easily be found amongst the tiger and wolf nomads, as they revere these deities as spirits. Istus, Incabulus, and Geshtai personify the superstitions the nomads all share. They believe strongly in fate and do not wish to thwart her designs. Nor do the nomads wish to see water sources, the essence of life, polluted. To do either of these things would lead diseases, nightmares, and curses to be visited on the offenders. And as a result, most nomads instead venerate the spirits of their ancestors. And shamans plead with them to intercede on their behalf to calm down the deities anytime they might be angered. Now, on a final note, we easily forget that the Bakluni's lands border other territories besides the Flanaess, and the Bakluni's culture and religion naturally reflects influences from lands and peoples the Flanaess would consider highly exotic. A person could spend a lifetime writing about these various fates, however, time we currently do not have. The Bakluni, unlike the Sul, retained much of their culture after the fall of their ancient empire. Spread across the expanse known as the Bakluni's Basin, the culture seems similar enough, but each is quite unique, and if you include the northern nomads and the southern Paynims, their cultures are very diverse, and their varying personalities have been shaped by the environments in which they dwell. Despite these differences, the Baklunish people do have common threads which link them together, and one of these is known as the 4 feet of the dragon. Honor, family, generosity, and piety, these are the 4 feet of the dragon. While the other human cultures of the Flanaess have an understanding of these concepts, the Bakluni people in general, a contemplative people, give them a much deeper meaning. Honor. It determines how a man carries out the activities of his day. It entails keeping one's word, not acting cowardly, conducting oneself as due his station in life. These are the acts of an honorable man, and even a bandit can still act honorable and remain, well, a bandit. A man without honor is a cur, to be beaten and killed, as one would kill any vermin. A man honors his parents and grandparents by marrying a woman of mutual standing who has a family that is also honorable. And an honorable man magnifies his grace and standing by taking care of his wife and children and seeing to their needs. He also takes care of his entire family when they are unable to do so themselves, due to the hand of Istus or through age. But honor is also bestowed by taking care of your employees in the same way as he would do his children. Bakluni are some of the most generous people in the Flanaess. They are expected to give generously with money, food, supplies, or whatever. They are also expected to be discreet. Charity is not something that they do to curry favor or respect. Anonymous donations are common across the Baklunish nations. The quantity of charity as an individual's wealth grows, and these charities are usually directed at people or institutions less fortunate. Hospitality is another aspect of this generosity. Hospitality to guests is considered sacred, and they have been raised to believe that anyone can request shelter from a Bakluni at any time, and then a man of honor must respect that request to the best of his ability. This can be an advantage for a Bakluni. He is virtually guaranteed shelter anywhere in the Flanaess he can find another of his ancestry. On the other hand, he may also be called on in this fashion. The 3rd feat is family, which generally defines any unit of community that an individual belongs to. For example, a Baklunish human may have many families, including his blood relatives, his church community, his military unit, or his village. The sense of community is strong, and they are fiercely loyal to each of their families and its members. An insult to any in a Baklunish family is an insult to her. The last feat of the dragon is piety, for they are very faithful people, and they are expected to be pious in their actions. Bakluni are heavily involved in their church organizations and take religious matters very seriously. Temples are frequent among all of their cities, and the various faiths play important roles in government and economy. Now, another common trait is their love of horses. Their dependence on horses adds many beliefs and traditions regarding their honored steeds, particularly among the nomads. All nomadic tribes regard the breeding and trading of horses for farming, transportation, and warfare a necessary and well-respected occupation. The animals are treated well, receiving high-quality food and daily exercise. Their saddles, tack, and harnesses receive careful attention. In foul weather, some nomads actually raise tents or yurts solely for the protection of their horses. Bakluni's lore is filled with legends and tales revolving around horses. In some communities, before beginning the evening meal, a toast is raised to the family's horses, naming each of them before the meal is begun. If you thought the Bakluni were easy to explain or their differences too small to take note of, then you thought wrong. It is quite a mess, which is why I decided to create short supplement videos on this topic. That way I can keep it as clear for you as I possibly can. And, on a side note, I will start doing this for the flan as well in the near future. Now, if you enjoyed my video, please leave a comment and show your support by ringing that bell icon. You will then be magically warned when I post another video, which is an absolutely amazing feat of magic. If you want to interact more with me, head over to my Twitter and website where you can join the league and maybe see you play at my table. Links in the description. Now, I do not know all the artists whose work I used in this video, and if you are the artist or know who it is, please let me know so I can give the proper credit. That said, I also want to thank the patrons already sponsoring my work. And see you in the next one.